Hello, in this broadcast, the information program Time. Today, for the first time in history, an American astronaut was launched into space on a Russian spacecraft. This flight will last for 80 days. During that time, they plan to emerge 5 times into open space, and an entire series of unique scientific experiments. Details on the beginning of the flight are reported by our correspondent from Baikonur. Before the launch of the spaceship Soyuz TM-21, less than 1 minute remains. Now everyone has come out onto the observation platforms and are watching the rockets. The mast cables have been pulled back, and now we're waiting until the last mast connecting the rocket with Earth will pull away, and the launch will begin. There, inside the rocket, during the last 2 hours, a crew has been seated, a joint crew, a Russian and an American crew. 2 of the members had previously been in space, Gennady Strikalov and Norman Thagard, the American astronaut. They had been in space 4 times already. The commander of the ship is Vladimir Dezhurov, and he will be in space for the first time. The cable mast has been pulled away, and around 15 seconds remains until takeoff. For everyone who prepares cosmonauts for flight, tonight was a sleepless night. At 5:30 in the morning, the crew departed for launching. Traditions at Baikonur are sacredly adhered to. We're accustomed to the fact that the crew, before takeoff, speaks with the head engineers, state delegations, heads of countries, and Norman Thagard spoke at length with his family. The most sacred thing for a person is family, and to meet with them before a dangerous mission is the death of an American astronaut. While still on Earth, Norman Thagard began to conduct a medical experiment. You see his eyeglasses. Norman will be wearing them during launch. Subsequently, everything went as usual. Delegation headed by the chairman of the Federative Council, Vladimir Shumika, NASA representatives, cosmonauts, and friends. Everyone came to see them off. No political restructuring of our system should in any way have an effect of weakening our country. This is the power of the Russian state and the talent of our people, and it can't be abandoned or forsaken. All of this will certainly be developed further. We continue. Today, Boris Yeltsin in the Kremlin met with the leadership of the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The meeting, which had been postponed several times for technical reasons, was held behind closed doors. A detailed analysis was given of the foreign political activities of the Foreign Affairs Department, and new directions were noted. But because the foreign policies of Russia is presidential, Boris Yeltsin permitted himself to express certain critical comments, demanding that the diplomats resolve the problem of perspective, prognosis, and analysis, and to learn to pursue multi-optioned resolutions for foreign political objectives. After the end of the meeting, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Andrei Kozyrev, gave an exclusive interview to our program. Will today's meeting precipitate changes in the foreign political course of Russia or a correction? No, there will be no principal changes, I think, because the foreign policy is daily conducted under the leadership of the President, and its directions were defined in the address of the President to the Federal Assembly and in other documents, but a correction, and in certain matters, a more in-depth analysis will probably require panels and probably a scientific advisory board with scientists and deputies, because today, in several directions, in essence, objectives are positioned in a new way, in an expanded type of plan aimed at the perspective Strategic matters, of course, they require comprehension, and in this sense, there will be modification. Overall, in what areas is this possible if we take into account the fact that our foreign policy has certain disagreements and differences in views with our basic partners? We have no objective to modify our foreign policy in such a way as to please everyone. Our main objective is that our foreign policy should correspond to and pursue the interests of our country, most of all, Russia and the CIS countries. The most complicated questions are in interrelations with NATO. I must say that here there can be no speculation at all. The Russian leadership is of a unanimous principle approach. We are against a rash, uncircumspective broadening of NATO, which interferes with partnership. And this emphasis on an uncircumspective, rash broadening, in essence, is now the main impediment for the development of that partnership which we would like. Today, the President of Russia executed the appointment to the post of his personal press secretary. He is Sergei Medvedev, our colleague, the famous television journalist. Viewers know him well as an anchor in the program Time and also as the author of live reports, including that most famous report in August of 1991. Military technology is firmly positioned around the Kremlin. This is not seen on television nor reported on radio. Sergei Medvedev is 37. In his professional choice, he followed his father's steps, the head of the Committee of Television Radio Broadcasting in Kaliningrad. After graduating from the journalism faculty of the Moscow State University, Sergei Medvedev in Ostankiно traversed the path from junior editor to observer in the program Time. The new press secretary intends to occupy his office in the Kremlin and assume his responsibilities Monday, the 20th of March. Today, Sergei Medvedev is still in our studio, but already in his new capacity. Sergei, this morning you met with the President of Russia and discussed details of your future work. If possible, details. What did you agree on with the President? The meeting was quite lengthy. It lasted for almost an hour. And I think that in the brief time in this program, I can't relate everything which we discussed, but the main focus of attention was to attempt to avoid or to provoke the most diverse rumors which originate in the Kremlin, and subsequently these rumors are embellished with theories and much curious information appears on the pages of our newspapers. A press secretary must be the link between the President and the press, between the President and the voters. Therefore, the press secretary directly must receive information firsthand from the President. The President agreed with me on that, and we concluded that the press secretary must at least once a week meet with the press, expound on positions of the President and express his intentions and possibly his plans, and comment on his decisions. I think this would be indispensable for journalists and for all viewers, listeners, and readers. That's in brief. I understand that you have completely submerged yourself into your imminent work, and yet while in the studio you can't forget that work which you performed over many years working in the Television Information Agency. What emotions are you feeling as a guest here for the first time? They are very complicated emotions because, quite honestly, I'm sorrowful to leave television. I love television. That is my true love. And I don't think I part with it forever. I would like to take advantage of the occasion and thank my viewers. I know I have them. Thank you for your letters, thank you for your attention, and until we meet again. In the Chechen Republic, during the last day, the situation underwent no fundamental changes. Unlawful armed formations attempted to hinder the movement of federal forces in the south and southeasterly directions from Grozny. The command of the United Forces in the Chechen Republic, the Deputy Minister of Internal Affairs, Commander Anatoly Kulikov, in an interview to our program, described the current military situation in Chechnya as follows. Overall, the situation in Grozny is under control. An enormous task is being conducted in forming the Ministry of Internal Affairs. More than 1,100 employees have been hired to that task. And literally in the last 5 days, Almost 300 people applied, and people do understand. And apart from that, an enormous task is underway to prepare for the full-scale unfolding of the domestic industrial restoration, life activity within the city, to restore the domestic industrial objects. Currently, during the last while, the situation around Argun is most complicated because there is a basic concentration of the gunmen's forces, and also around Gudermes. I think that we will fulfill our objective, and our mission is to take this territory under control. Combat in Chechnya is in its fourth month. Are there perspectives for political resolution of the Chechen crisis? Every day, both here and on locations and upon visiting other regions of the Republic, we meet with the most diverse categories of the population in the Republic, and we become more and more convinced that our proposals, as of today, are the optimal version for a final end to war. They permit, within the next 3 to 4 months, to already hold elections in the Republic. And now it's very important to structure our work in such a way as to shift from a military course, a battle for power as a power struggle, into a political and civilized course. The statement of Ramazan Abdullah that deliveries to the territory of Chechnya of large cargoes of weapons and money to support the Dadaev forces went by with the involvement of the Russian border forces, evoked a severe protest from the Federal Service of the Border Services. I don't know of any facts that these statements were based on regarding the entry from the outside onto the territory of Chechnya of weapons, nor were any concrete routes or times defined. We must, first of all, have to understand what is the function of the border troops in the conflict zone. Their basic duty is to protect the national border, the Russian-Azerbaijani and the Russian-Georgian stretch of the border. I can guarantee 100% that no weapons had entered Chechnya through that border. It's another matter that the administrative border of Chechnya is not covered sufficiently. It's covered by border forces and internal forces and local law enforcement structures. And I don't exclude the possibility that somewhere from the territory of the Northern Caucasus, even perhaps from Russia, these weapons may be entering. On the backdrop of combat, attempts are being made to find a peaceful solution to the crisis. Seeking such avenues were participants of the conference, the Peace Initiative in the Caucasus. Messages were sent by the President and Premier of Russia to the conferencees. In the letter, which the head of the government of Russia, Viktor Chernomyrdin, sent to the participants of the conference and read by the Vice Premier Sergei Shakrai, an opinion was expressed that the documents developed at the conference may serve in achieving peace. The Peace Initiative in the Caucasus initially had elected for itself a direction that was to cease combat in Chechnya, to perform humanitarian activities, and a switch to a peaceful resolution of the conflict and others. In this view, discussions were held until the podium was assumed by the head of the Government of National Rebirth of Chechnya, Salambek Hadjiev. In the Chechen Republic over the last 3 years, an open criminal regime was established with all criminal attributes and elements. And no beautiful words, no demagogy can conceal this real fact. There is a war underway there. And here, people are satiated, sufficiently well clothed, and look quite well. But there, people are dying from hunger, for your information. And there, every night, around 20 people die. They are killed by either Dadaev supporters, anti-Dadaev forces, or federal forces, or non-federal forces, or marauders. At that moment, the speech of the Premier of Chechnya was interrupted by supporters of Jahar Dadaev. This is not a peace conference, it's a provocation. This is a peace conference. Please sit down. Where are you going? There are ways, there are sound proposals. Here there are many deputies of the State Duma who have invested much energy and strength in trying to find the solution. But the goal is unanimous. We all want an end of war. Will this peace conference facilitate peace in Chechnya? For now, it's difficult to say. I don't know. But I think that now the question in Chechnya is not who will kill more, but who will salvage more. The results of the work of the conference was the adoption of a plan of gradual resolution of the Chechen crisis. The head of the Russian government today presented the president with a prospective plan of measures toward the peaceful resolution of the Chechen crisis. And a special state commission on the backdrop of that resolved a series of concrete problems regarding Chechnya. These specific issues were priority measures in sustaining life in the demolished city. Among them, bread, water, sewage, electrical power, natural gas. As previously in Grozny, there's a bread shortage. The opened bread factory provides almost 30 tons with a need of 110. And only 1 liter of water per day per person is issued, either for drinking or washing. At the same time, in restorational work, there are around 3,000 workers involved. In 14 days of March, they've delivered 85 wagons with seeds, food, and fertilizer into the area. The energy workers for now are supporting regions where field work has begun. They're gradually reviving natural gas lines, but still they have difficulties with financing. The government has already specified 5 commercial banks through which money will arrive, and Minotat was first to open a branch in Grozny. A building has been found by the central bank as well. In general, life continues. Half of the population is busy digging, the other half is busy burying. The president of Kazakhstan, Nursultan Nazarbayev, continues to form a new cabinet of ministers of the republic. Today, the vice presidents were appointed. Meanwhile, a significant group of deputies of the Kazakhstani parliament does not intend to relinquish powers. They have appealed to the United Nations with a request to send independent experts to Kazakhstan to study the situation, and 2 deputies of parliament have even announced a hunger strike in protest against the fact that the parliament was declared illegitimate. About the parliament of Kazakhstan and the legal aspects of this political crisis, in an interview with Nursultan Nazarbayev exclusively for the program Time. We do have a constitution and we have laws. And they confirm Kazakhstan as a democratic state, as a civil state, a country striving for legal statehood, and therefore all of this will be observed, and lawful constitutional rights of people as well, and democracy will be pushed ahead, the market economy will be pushed forward, and all our international agreements, including the latest agreement with Russia, will be put into force by me, because with the suspension of Parliament, the right to issue decrees having force of law and to carry amendments into the laws, specifically constitutional ones, are now in the hands of the President of the Republic. Since the entire Supreme Soviet was recognized as unconstitutional, all of its decisions are unconstitutional, and hence I will have to re-ratify all of them. Because the Prime Minister was appointed with the agreement of that Supreme Soviet, and on his proposal the entire membership of the government was confirmed, and he is now illegitimate. Therefore, the government has resigned. To prevent a vacuum of executive power, I have appointed a Prime Minister whom I've instructed within a week to submit a membership of government for confirmation. Work of the investigation continues in the case of the murder of Vladislav Listyev. Vitortas today reports that Vladislav Listyev was the 4th victim during this year of heads of firms within the consortium Reklama Holding, or Advertising Holding. In the interest of the investigation, the names of the 3 previous victims of settling of accounts are not revealed. The investigation has information about the actual killers of Vladislav Listyev. Interfax was told by the head of the investigative team, Boris Uvadov. He announced that currently attempts are underway to create composite drawings of these individuals. According to Uvadov, it's not compulsory that these new composite drawings will be publicized, because this helps to orientate the criminals and hampers the investigation. Another press conference in the Ministry of Internal Affairs had no concrete topic. They simply related how Russia has lived through the first 3 months of the year and how it intends to survive the remaining 9. That means, from the point of view of crime, as organized and daily street crime as well. In the opinion of General Kulikov, there was no serious growth in crime since the beginning of the year. There's even been a decrease of the number of daily domestic murders, which is not so for criminal murders. Incidentally, the criminal code is in no hurry to respond to the growing activity of the criminal world. Let's say in the code, absent to date is the term even children know, murder for hire. And yet, speaking overall about hired murders, victims of which are most frequently entrepreneurs, General Kulikov expressed the opinion that in our country they just don't kill for nothing, which means dark business with criminals is implied. They also would have touched on the murder of Vladislav Listyev, but the conversation was abbreviated. Give us an opportunity for a certain period of time to have rest from speculation. If there is something to say then it will be said. We have to first solve the case and tell the public the case is solved. That's my subjective opinion. Meanwhile, the number of those murders for hire, which are so rarely solved, is growing. Monday evening, in Moscow, the president of the Republican Union of Entrepreneurs, Oleg Zverev, was killed. The body of Oleg Zverev, with bullet wounds in the head and back, was found on the stairwell of his home where he lived. We continue the broadcast. The mayor of Moscow accused the government of Russia that it has taken the city under economic siege. According to Interfax, Lushkov feels culprits for that are the Minister of the Economy of Yasin and the first Vice Premier, Anatoly Chubaits. As Lushkov feels, in the battle with inflation, they want to cause Moscow to suffocate. Yuri Lushkov stated that he intends to discuss all of this tomorrow at the meeting with the Prime Minister Chernomyrdin. Russian miners on the 15th of March will not picket the government building, but tomorrow an extended session of the Presidium of the Union Coal Workers will be held, where they plan to develop a proposal to be handed to Anatoly Chubaits on the same day. Depending on the results of the meeting with him, the union will decide whether to hold the previously planned protest action of the miners. Finally, the time has come for active involvement in industrial safety, more precisely into the danger which, like a literal axe, hangs over each workstation, sector notwithstanding. Today, the Commission on Operational Matters, chaired by Alexis Kovets, reported there was the report of the head of the State Industrial Monitoring or Inspection of Russia was read with the following figures. In 1994, there were 397 major accidents, which took the lives of 594 people, and there were 90 cases of group trauma with almost 300 injuries. More briefly, the level of accident and injury, despite the overall decline in productivity, grows incessantly. The basic causes are the same as the causes for the collapse of the economy: weak executive discipline, meager financing, the ruptured vertical of responsibility, and drunkenness. 50% of injuries are connected with alcoholic inebriation. The Commission has adopted a decision to tighten sanctions against companies of all forms of property for violating the technology of safety, and to confirm the right of the State Committee of Inspection or Monitoring to close down production facilities and expedite the preparation of law on industrial safety. President Yeltsin has signed a decree to award medals for service to the homeland to a group of state and public figures. 12 people have been awarded with this medal for contributions connected with the completion of the first phase of Czech privatization. Among them, the chairman of the State Committee of Property, Sergei Belayev, deputy chairman of the Federal Commission on Securities, Dmitry Vasilyev, the governor of the Nizhegorod district, Boris Nemtsov, and other people. Russia has a dire need for a civilized gold market, feels the chairman of the board of the Gold Bank, Valery Brayko, established by a company of the former heads, the former Glav Almaz Zolota, and already celebrating its 55th anniversary. The bank and organizers of the Union of Gold Industrialists of Russia initiated the union's was initiated by union companies procuring more than 80% of Russian gold. Our inflation currently is at a level of 15%, and miners are paid based on the price of last month. In essence, they are underpaid by 15%. The union will be a non-commercial organization and will lobby the interests of the gold industrialists of the sector. This sector should be flourishing, but it's not so. Last year, the government paid for gold with a tremendous delay. Some companies even became bankrupt. The organizers of the Union of Gold Industrialists suggested companies be granted the right to independently sell portions of gold because the domestic market won't be able to absorb a significant quantity of this metal. The state monopoly on European foreign gold trade must be restricted. The president of Gold Bank is confident the potential of this sector will justify hope. Today, near Sarajevo, 9 French military servicemen died of the UN contingent in former Yugoslavia. Their death is not connected with military action and was a result of a road vehicular accident. The transport vehicle carrying blue helmet troops overturned on the road and fell into an abyss. The Minister of Defense of France, Lyotard, immediately flew to Sarajevo. Turbulence escalates around the fishing conflict between Canada and Spain. The sides are making serious mutual accusations and threaten with various punitive measures. Canada feels that the European Union countries have exhausted fishing resources near the large Newfoundland bed through their fishing piracy, and the time has come to end the outrage. As a consequence, Canada arrested a Spanish fishing trawler. The reaction of European Union countries followed immediately. At the session of the Ministers of Agricultural Industry of the country, underway in Toulouse, they are discussing potential sanctions against Ottawa, and Spain accuses Canada of state piracy and threatens to sever diplomatic relations and intends to appeal to the International Tribunal of Justice. There hasn't been such a large-scale fishing scandal for a long time, and the cause simply seems to be the halibut, which inhabits the waters around Newfoundland. This island survives through fishing halibut, and the matter is not so much in halibut as in the established quotas on fishing. And for some countries, they seem too low, and for others, outrageous. But in any case, this fishing war will never escalate into a true war. The countries of the North Atlantic community have seen several such conflicts and have always found a solution acceptable for the sides. There are time-tested mechanisms for the resolution of similar disputes, and probably the threat from Spain, the threats made by Spain and Canada will remain only threats. The UN Security Council, again for the 24th time, has refused to lift sanctions against Iraq. In this connection, great satisfaction was expressed by the United States. The United States managed to create a strong anti-Iraqi majority in the Security Council. This was stated by the permanent representative in the UN, Madeleine Albright. The cheapest product in Iraq is gasoline. For $1, one may buy a ton. A liter of gasoline is 20 times cheaper than a loaf of bread and 20 times cheaper than 1 liter of purified drinking water. While the pumping stations are pumping this wealth of Iraq, but in a few months, the absence of spare parts will stop this productivity, and then what? Then, in the conditions of a continuing trade blockade against Iraq by Western countries, it will be necessary to realize illegally to import through Turkey and Jordan the fuel supply stored in reservoirs, because as such there is no blockade on exporting oil products from Iraq. Witnesses assert that roadways leading to the northwest of the country are covered with an oil leak, a result of leak of oil transport trucks and convoys moving 24 hours a day. The Americans, on whose initiative the blockade began, in the final analysis directed against the people of Iraq, are currently opposing methods of the Russian military in Chechnya and have forgotten and concealed well at one time the barbaric killing of 460 children in a bomb shelter in Baghdad, where ostensibly Saddam Hussein was located and continued to exterminate the Iraqi people. Infant mortality has increased 100-fold. In hospitals, there are no medications. Children die literally before your eyes because of starvation and emaciation. And the so-called Russian cards are no help, which once a month the government once a month issues a ration sufficient for a child for 3 or 4 days. This is inhumane, as in the past our only hope is Russian doctors. They alone will save our children, even free of charge. Russia is again submitting additional conditions for lifting the embargo on oil shipments from Iraq. This was stated by the permanent representative of Russia to the UN, Sergei Lavrov. He noted that some countries clearly are striving to interpret the resolution of the UN Security Council too broadly and encumber any moves towards softening sanctions with demands which were never imposed by these sanctions initially. The age-long wish of Fidel Castro has come true. He's in Paris on the invitation of the General Director of UNESCO. It's a personal visit, but the Cuban president was greeted on French soil with all honors befitting his rank in the airport, but without official figures. He was greeted in a Western European capital, with the exception of Spain, for the first time in the 36 years of Castro rule in Cuba, subjected all those years to isolation on the international arena. Countering criticism in this regard, President Mitterrand philosophically noted that if France hosted only representatives of countries observing human rights, then they would have very few such guests here. At the dignified dignified dinner in honor of the Cuban guest, the French president couldn't exclude from the menu the very spicy dish for him on the topic of human rights, attempting to accent attention of the French public and politicians were Cuban political immigrants with their speeches on Parisian streets against the rehabilitation of the current Cuban regime. But hosting its leader, France has no intention to demonstrate solidarity through it. This is more of a demonstration of unspoken support to the independent policy of Havana, which over the last 30 years resisted the economic and diplomatic pressure from Washington. Such a position of Paris, as here they feel, is even more justified by the fact that because in American political circles there are louder calls to alleviate these sanctions. Today, the daily broadcasting of Radio Freedom and Free Europe begins from Prague. Broadcasts will be aired to the CIS in 20 languages, 139 hours daily. Attention in the studio. The microphone has been turned on. From Prague, broadcasting of the RFFE has begun, the radio station of Freedom and Free Europe. At this moment, probably turning in the graves are the comrades Klimen Gottwald and the dear Leonid Ilyich, commander of the invasion of the Czech invasion in August of 1968, and other leaders of the fraternal nations and parties. History loves paradoxes. The American radio stations, which have moved here from Munich, have situated themselves in the building of the parliament of the former socialist Czechoslovakia. Life turned out to be stronger than ideological myths and artificial silencers. It's interesting, incidentally, how many billions of rubles, then a full-fledged value, was spent then wastefully to stifle adversarial radio voices. The fact itself that the headquarters of the radio station of Freedom and Free Europe have moved to Prague symbolizes a new political era. Rental charges for this enormous building are also symbolic. 1 krone per day. That means $14 a year. The Czechs themselves have invited Freedom and Free Europe here because the American Congress severely cut back by 4 times the budget of the radio station. But in the Czech Republic, the cost of living and technical service are much cheaper than in the FRG. And so in the former parliamentary building, now the former subversive radio stations are operating. The only reminder of the past is this work of socialist realism. After the ads, the events of the sports life will be related to you by Anatoly Malyavin. I wish you all the best. Let's rejoice at the victory of our marvelous athlete. In the moment of stardom for Larisa Lazutin across the ocean in Canada. Good evening, and so 3 starts and 3 victories. The 29-year-old skier from suburban Moscow, Larisa Lazutin, is the undisputedly crowned queen of the snow slopes in Thunder Bay. The result is doubly more pleasant in the year of the centennial of the Russian sport of skiing. Now details of that race, which brought her the undoubted triumph. Any other result apart from victory of our skiers would have been the loudest sensation. Our girls didn't permit doubt for themselves or for their main rivals in their superiority. Larisa Lazutin came in first at the 10-kilometer distance and was the first to finish for the gold medal. She was supported by Nina Gavrilyuk and Olga Danilova, who received the silver and bronze medals. The Russian team, because of the victories of the fairer half, is leading at the World Championships. The ice of the Dutch city Assinge, our auto racers are striving for victory again, is lucky. In the Dutch Grand Prix on the first day, the World Championships were won by Balashov, and in the head, Vyacheslav Nikurin. Best chances to become world champ for victory of racing is Olof Surenes from Sweden. News from the chess world in Spain. Anatoly Karpov, after his 10th round, is the top contender for the super tournament with 7.5 points. Vasily Ivanchuk has 1.5 points less. In the finals between Gato Kamsky and Vishy Adams, after the 4th game, a time remains. The rivalry of the 2 tennis giants of the world, the first and second seeded Americans Pete Sampras and Andre Agassi. Sampras, who lost the Australian Open, this time is stronger on the California courts. First prize to the top player of the world and a check for $250,000. The St. Petersburg Open on the courts of the city on the Neva has a $300,000 purse. Among the contenders are the Russians Andrei Chesnakov, Andrei Cherkasov, Alexander Volkov, Yakov Klasik from Switzerland, and of course the top place player is of the tournament Yevgeny Kafelnikov, who intends to be first. Good evening. Despite the fact that in the calendar it's still the middle of March on the majority of the territories of our countries, the winter doesn't want to relinquish positions. The Kola Peninsula, the Nenes Autonomous District, the north of Komi, and prepolar Ural will be under the influence of a cyclone with the center over the Barents Sea. There will be a dense cloud cover in the skies with some snow, possible blizzard, and strong gusty winds, 20 to 25 meters per second, temperatures from -1 to 6 degrees. In the Arhangis district in Karelia, in the south of Komi, and in the Volga-Vyatsk region, and also in the Baltic states and in the Kaliningrad district, on the backdrop of high atmospheric pressure, variably cloudy skies, no precipitation during the day, 0-5. In the central Chernozem area, over the central Volga, and in Belarus, it will continue to be clear and cold. During the night hours, temperatures will sink to -7 to 12. During the day, it will be -2 to 7. Under the influence of that same anticyclone in Ukraine and in Moldova, precipitation will cease, cloudiness will decrease, and it will become colder. At night, temperatures will show -3 to 8. During the day, in Ukraine, -3 to 6. In Moldova, 0-3. A cold Arctic air has reached the south of our country as well, where already gardens are blooming and the fields are beginning to show sprouts. On the lower Don and the Krasnodar Stavropol areas, in northern Caucasus republics, it has become severely colder. At night to -3-8, during the day 0-5. Snow mixed with rain should fall. On the Black Sea coast and in the steppe areas of the Stavropol Rim area, strong gusty winds, 20 to 25 meters per second. Around Sochi, some light rain, +6 to 8. On the lower Volga, it's cloudy and rainy during the day, -1 to 3. Beyond the Caucasus, there will be the influence of an atmospheric front. It will be cloudy with some rainfall, temperatures of +5 to 10 degrees. In St. Petersburg, it's mostly clear, no precipitation. At night, -4 to 6. During the day, around 0. Winds are from the southwest, 5 to 8 meters per second. In Moscow, it will continue to be clear and cold. At night, -10 to 12 degrees. During the day, 0-2. In this broadcast, we used data from the Oceanic Meteorological Center of Russia. All the best. Goodbye.